In this video, we are looking at this key knowledge point, the composition and cause of net foreign debts and net foreign equities, a relatively simple key knowledge point, and the main purpose is to capture what is Australia's total obligations overseas versus what overseas countries might be obligated to us. So as a recap, this is the balance of payments, and it's made up of two major accounts, the current account, which is on the left, and the capital and financial account, which is known as the CAFA. And for capturing net foreign debts and net foreign equities, we're primarily looking at the right side of this balance of payments. And so the main types of transactions that we're looking at is going to be net direct investments, net portfolio investments, and net debt flows. So starting with net foreign debts, there are two types of classifications. They could be official debts and non-official. So when you're seeing the word official, what it simply means is that they are borrowings made by the government, and when it's non-official, it's just simply made by either citizens or large institutions. So remember that anytime you see the word debt, the main association is with money and cash. And so in the future, what we know is that anytime we borrow money, it's going to flow out from the current account because we make interest payments. And so the composition of the net foreign debts is simply going to be the borrowing and lending of money. One thing to note as well, the word debt implies that it's going to be an outflow. So even when you calculate net foreign debts, if the number is positive, it means that we've actually borrowed more money from overseas. And if it's a negative number, it means that we've lent out more money than we've borrowed. So let's have a visualization of what this actually looks like. So you've got Australia and the rest of the world. And so starting with Australia's total borrowing, imagine that we've gone to a range of different countries and we've borrowed a total of $10 billion. Now, because this is an inflow of funds, this 10 billions is going to appear as a credit entry. And so now we've looked at the Australia total borrowing. And so if we're looking at Australia's money lent out, we simply do the reverse. And let's say, for the sake of example, Australia has lent out $5 billion. So because this 5 billion represents an outflow of money, that is a debit entry, and you can kind of consider the 5 billion as a negative number as well. And so once we've established that, you simply calculate the net foreign debt by adding up the two values, and what we're going to see is that we are in a total debt of $5 billion. Now moving on to net foreign equities, we're primarily focused on investments, and these investments can be things like shares, it could be the sale of capital equipment, and in some cases it can also be the sale of land. And so what we're trying to look at is the difference between how much other countries invest in Australia versus how much Australians invest in other countries. Now the net foreign equities value is slightly different because if the total is a negative number, what it's saying is that Australians are actually investing more overseas than other countries are investing into Australia. And if the net foreign equities number is positive, what it means is that more foreigners are investing in Australia than Australians investing overseas. And so for net foreign equities, we're primarily looking at these two types of transactions, the portfolio investments and also the direct investments. And so let's do a visualization of what this all looks like. So once again, looking at a similar type of diagram, Australian investments owned by overseas, which means that we're receiving an inflow of money. And then we subtract the overseas investments owned by Australians, which is ultimately going to be outflows because we're purchasing overseas equity. And so through this hypothetical situation, what we're going to calculate is that the net foreign equities is going to equal negative 2 billion. And so what this is signifying is that on average, we're actually spending a net total more in other countries than we are receiving investments from foreigners. So when you add both net foreign debt and net foreign equity, you get the number of net foreign liabilities. And this positive number is going to represent the financial obligations that you must pay. Now, if the net foreign liabilities figure was a negative number, what it's actually saying is that other countries owe us more money in net terms. And so we can represent everything that we've just looked at in a graph like this. So in the orange, we're looking at the net foreign debt. And if you're looking at the left side, it's above zero. And so what this is simply showing is that Australia has borrowed more money than it has lent out. Now, net foreign equities is going to be in this bottom here. this line below 0. And what that is showing is that Australians are investing more overseas than overseas companies or individuals investing in Australia. And so the line in the middle is signifying how much money we actually owe on total to other countries. Because remember, if net foreign equities is negative, meaning that we're investing more in other countries, in the future, that's going to be a positive thing because then we receive inflows through the current account, which ultimately means that we owe less financial obligations in the future. So in summary, while it might be alarming that our net foreign liabilities is a really large number, it's not necessarily a major problem if we can continue to finance and pay off those debts. If you think about us purchasing a house and you're required to make mortgage payments, it doesn't matter that your debt is really large. If you have enough income to sustain and make those monthly or weekly payments, then your overall position is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, if your liabilities keep growing out of control and you're unable to make payments, then in the future it's going to affect the amount of funding or investments a country is able to receive, which may cause some issues in the future. So for our country, we typically have a net foreign debt because we like to borrow a lot, and from the previous video you know what the savings and investment gap means. But some other reasons why we also have a large debt is because we typically run budget deficits, meaning that we're spending more than what we are making. And from number 3 to 6, these are some external causes that could also contribute to why we continually borrow money. And that's it for this video.